The Play Action podcast is fueled by Picasso's Pizza, where every night is pizza night.
Hey everyone, we're at Bill's training camp, and by that, quite literally, we are in the dorms right now. Please enjoy our setups of a Barbie comforter, a Space Jam lamp, which you can't see, and Mark, you have some, dorm vibes going on as well too. But outside of that, one of the bigger storylines so far has been hearing from Stefon Diggs, hearing from a few other people just kind of about what his frustrations were this past off season and how to move forward from there. So, Mark, what were your takeaways from some of that?
Well, first of all, I think it was good they cleared the air rather than leave it like a cloud hanging over them. And I thought it was good that Stefon did it, was not confrontational or defensive about it. I thought his demeanor was calm. I'm going to say what I'm going to say, and I don't have anything to be defensive about. Would you agree with that? That he was like he was not like, this is I got nails under my fingernails, being ordered to speak here. So with that being said, here's my interpretation, reading between the lines. Number one, I think it is largely about communication with Josh late in the season when things were not going as smoothly. He said it's a family issue. Siblings don't always get along. Josh in the spring said I could communicate better. And I lean it more towards communication. Number two, he said it was good to hear him say that it's not about targets because he's among the league leaders in targets. He said, I couldn't call a play to save my life. So it's not about, he completely dismissed, I want more say in how the offense gets called. Not about that. It's really not about Dorsey targets per se. And so, that was as far as he went. He didn't want to go into it any more than that, except for explaining it away as a family dispute. But I think it's more about communication than his pass routes.
Yeah, and to your point, Mark, even if he wasn't so specific about this is exactly what the conversation was at minicamp, he ruled out a lot of things that had been kind of speculated on. I think as well, to me, having covered him for a bit, I don't know how you feel, but Stefon Diggs is generally pretty open about some things like this. He talks a lot about how athletes are entire people outside of their sports, but they're still giving so much to it that, of course, he's frustrated. I found it kind of illuminating when he was talking about he's realizing that he has more football behind him than in front of him. He is very acutely aware that, while he is not old, in the NFL, he is getting older, and that contributes to his window to win. We talk a lot about a team's window to win, but he was so clear he wants to win a Super Bowl. That's his focus. And so simply not getting that, he basically was like, well, of course I'm frustrated. We're not achieving our goal. And I think a lot of that stuff, sometimes when players are talking about this is the only thing I want, I'm all in on this, and the team's doing great, it's like, that's awesome. Meanwhile, if the team's falling short, then that's when it's like, oh, why is he frustrated? What's wrong? When he's the same Stefon Diggs at each point. It's just now it's being kind of picked apart a little bit more, had been for a bit. So I agree. It was good to hear from him directly. Just, what's up, man? Like, what are you feeling? What's going on? But I think it's, from my perspective, not much has changed with Diggs' situation in the sense of he is always this fiery guy. We just saw it coming out more frustrated than before, and he's going to do anything he can to fix that. As far as the team winning.
Yeah, and I think fans would agree to that he feels they've kind of missed They had Super Bowl caliber, teams. He views them as Super Bowl caliber teams the last 3 years, and they didn't get it done. So that's frustrating to him. Fans can relate to that. Now, I just think, so that's all well and good. I think he said what basically needed to be said. He didn't need to get into deep into the weeds about what I said this and Josh said this, and that's fine. But though, still we'll just monitor. There are going to be tough times in every season. And, if they lose 2 or 3 in a row, the concern is Josh going to feel more pressure to please Diggs than maybe he should feel. So that's something to watch during the season. But anyway, it's good that it's very good that Stefon addressed it in a non-threatening way off the top. Okay, we are recording here from lovely St. John Fisher University. It is lovely, actually. I like it here. The weather's beautiful. We're recording after 2 days of training camp. Obviously, all fans are fanatical and want to know, how do they look? So keeping in mind, they're still practicing in shorts and T-shirts, but looking forward ahead to what we're looking toward and going to be watching for over the next couple of weeks. Katherine, thoughts on what you've seen the first 2 days?
Yeah, to start, I thought it was funny when on the first day of training camp, Mark, you were asking Josh Allen something about all the guys he has at his disposal and how they can basically solve any defense possibly with that. And Josh Allen quipped like, yeah, we've got all the answers. Day 1 of camp, we figured it all out. They know it's so early on. There's still so much to do, but there's a lot to watch for this team. I think it's been particularly interesting so far to see some of the things they're doing with their different tight ends. Obviously, they went out and got Dalton Kincaid, still figuring out what exactly he's going to do in this offense to maximize everyone. But for the tight end group itself, also Quentin Morris had an incredible one-handed catch today too. So they've been a really fun group to watch. Dawson Knox was describing Quentin's play as insane, stuff like that, where it bounced off a few guys because it was raining Thursday. But just kind of seeing what that group is doing, not only as this offense takes another step in year 2 under Ken Dorsey, but as they mix in personnel a little differently as well.
Jumping off that, I agree. And I'm hesitant to put too much, to pump up the Kincaid presence too much, but I cannot remember them like they are force feeding this guy. He clearly is a big part of the offensive plan. So it's going to be fascinating to watch. Is he up to it? I mean, I feel like it's an obligation to temper expectations on Kincaid, but just watching them, he's a big part of the plan. I thought Dorsey had some good quotes about Kincaid today. He said he does a great job as a route runner, to whether it's attacking leverage or whether it's setting up people with his stem and his route. So just route running ability and body control to get in and out of cuts, obviously, I think is good. So, yeah, Kincaid is going to be fascinating to watch right up all preseason, and he's in the center of the action.
Yeah, then on the flip side a little bit, I think when watching the defense, it's still kind of interesting to watch, to hear more about how Sean McDermott is acclimating to calling the defense once again. We heard a good anecdote from Dawson Knox this week about how we had heard before that there's a little more trash talking now between players on the offense and Sean McDermott as he takes this larger role in the defense right now. But Dawson Knox was joking that McDermott came by a meeting for the offense last night and they were all like, no, you have to get out of here. Like, we're going against you in practice. You can't know what we're up to. Obviously, he is still involved in the offense and does know what they're up to. But I think just kind of that level of chirping at each other a little more has kept it light and fun, as he's been openly, McDermott, excited about getting back more involved in kind of the classroom aspect of coaching. He's said a lot of times how he missed kind of that part of it. So, just keeping an eye on that during training camp of how will that then impact the defense as a whole too, whether it's different coverages, different stunts, stuff like that, as we're starting to see show up a little bit.
McDermott acknowledged he's got big decisions, coming up this summer to make at middle linebacker and a cornerback. Cornerback, really fascinating competition. And I just view it as being wide open. We keep saying who's going to win. Well, yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's a rotation. Dane Jackson has been most of the time the number one cornerback. But Kaiir Elam has made a couple plays both of the first 2 days. Christian Benford had an interception of Josh Allen on the goal line yesterday, and he has made some plays. So that, it's a three-way wide open battle, and I'm not sure what's going to happen there. That's it's going to be fascinating to watch.
Particularly given how much they rotated last year, sometimes by necessity out of who was injured, who was not, sometimes just to get more looks at guys to evaluate, but they rotated so frequently. Even in late December, I remember McDermott was like, we would like to have the CB2 spot kind of solidified, but now we're still talking about it at training camp the next year. And then middle linebacker as well, as they continue to see who's going to work in there for Tremaine Edmonds, mixing in guys a bit. I think that decision, while they want to eventually, get someone in there to have that communication aspect down pat by this time the season starts, they're still evaluating right now.
Another thing that I'm continuing to watch, and it's kind of wide open, who truly is the number one wide receiver in the slot when they play three wide receivers. And, the favorites really are Khalil Shakir and Trent Sherfield. I view Deontay Hardy as more of the gadget, better version, they hope, of Isaiah McKenzie. I think it's Sherfield or Shakir in the slot. And are they good enough? Are either of those guys good enough? I don't think there's another case where it might not be a winner. It's going to be a rotation. But do they have a good enough player there in the possession receiving game? That's going to be something to watch. And Dorsey, I'll go back. He was pretty. He had a good quote today. He feels like they have enough answers. Last year, they did not have enough answers aside from Josh being great and Diggs. They did not have other good answers. And Dorsey's quote today was, I think that's the exciting part of where we're at, is we've got a lot of different tools and pieces that we can really move around and create some different looks. And I think that'll really help not only in the run game, or not only in game 1, but in game 15, 16, et cetera, and be able to create mismatches and utilize guys in different ways. So that's the ideal. That's what they hope will happen. And that's what we're watching for. Should we be confident that that's going to happen through training camp? We'll see. For our last segment here on the Play Action podcast, we're going to talk about a special offer from the Buffalo News, a project that we've been working on at the News, a book on the history of the 50 years of the stadium in Orchard Park. It's called Nowhere Else You'd Rather Be, 50 Years of Cherished Comebacks, Concerts, and Classic Moments in Orchard Park. And we're happy to be joined here today by Corey Desiderio, the book editor, who was my privilege to work with. Corey, tell us about this.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Started shipping out to anyone who pre-ordered it this week. So as Mark said, it talks about the last 50 years of events that have happened in Orchard Park. So not just all of the historic Bills games, but there's been 2 huge hockey games there, the Winter Classic and also the World Junior U.S. versus Canada game. And then, of course, there's dozens of concerts that have been there, too, dating back to the first year it was open in 1973. Not only stars, from the professional athletes, but also rock stars and world famous acts have made their way through OP.
Corey asked me to write a few of the chapters of the book, looking back on Bills history, writing about some of the Bills' big games. I also happen to have been there for the first game on August 17th, 1973. And so I wrote a little essay on what the first game was like. Yes, I got lost in the parking lot, couldn't find my car, was wandering around. I seem to think it was like 45 minutes. Maybe it was 20 minutes or 15, but it seemed like forever. Because, when you parked at the rock pile, you just parked, you knew, okay, I'm up 6 blocks on Best Street, and away you went. Now there's it was one of a zillion cars. So anyway, I did a little segment, a chapter there on looking back with a little levity on the kind of the confusion that was the first game. Corey, kind of, do you, as a lifelong Buffalonian, what do you think? Do you think did you learn stuff that you didn't know? If there's like everyday Bills fans, what do you think they'll get out of this?
Absolutely. I mean, I was born in the early '90s, so I wasn't at the first game at the Bills Stadium like you were. So going back to the '70s and the '80s, the first couple years where OJ was just coming into his own, becoming a superstar. The lean years of the '80s, and then going into the glory years, which I learned about through my parents. That was a little closer to my age. So there were so many different things that I've learned about Bill's history past that. Whether it's through your writing, I know Jay Skursky also contributed a few chapters to the book. Whether it's through your writing and searching the archives of the news, whether it's either photos or they're actually like front pages, A1 stories, and sports covers from games and even the player strike. So there's definitely a lot of history lessons, maybe some stuff that people did know about and maybe forgot. Like my dad, when he was flipping through the book earlier this week, he would point to a few, cover stories and, forgot that this even happened. So it's a really great, look back down memory lane and a lot of new lessons and new history tidbits to learn about.
All right, so Corey, the book has been pre-ordered by many people. Just tell us about the fact it's shipped out and how can people get this book. And we have a special offer here on this podcast.
Yeah, so the book is available at buffalonewsstore.com. Through Sunday, it is 25% off. But for our Play Action podcast listeners, we're doing another special through Sunday. If you, in the cart, there's a little box on the bottom that says special instructions for seller. If you type in the word Play Action, you could get a Josh Allen schedule poster for free just for ordering the book.
Great. All right, so the Play Action podcast will be back from training camp again next week, we expect. And so please subscribe to this podcast wherever you get them.
Treat your team to the most flavorful pizza on game day at Picasso's Pizza. 4 great Western New York locations: Williamsville, West Seneca, Lancaster, and Blaisdell. Picasso's. We are Buffalo's Pizza since 1980. Order online today at picassospizza.net.